Intellectual property. That's our deal. So our old friend, the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, says that Congress has the power to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times, notice limited times, to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Exclusive right. So what we can do in the Constitution is for a limited time, though no meaning of what that means, set up a monopoly that if you write a book for the length of time granted to you by Congress, you have a monopoly right to that book. And we know what monopoly means. We're going to get higher prices. That monopolist is going to make more money. The point of this, again, is to promote the progress. How do I get people to invent new things? How do I get people to write stuff and make songs and all that stuff? Well, some people are going to do it for the joy, but really you're going to do more of it for the money. Just ask Metallica. Okay? So we're trying to encourage science and useful arts. So, owning an idea and owning a chair. You own them. Nobody can use your chair, take your chair, without your permission. So why should they be able to take your idea without your permission? This is the issue that we have on the internet all the time these days, is people download stuff illegally. They would never go into your house and steal your chair, but they're perfectly happy to go into your brain and steal your ideas. And to the law, there's no difference between an idea that I own and my chair. If I take my chair and I put it out on the sidewalk in front of my house, I'm telling people, come by and pick it up if you want it. If it's in my house, it's a different thing. Same thing with ideas. If I put those ideas out there, the guy who invented HTML, the guy who essentially invented the internet, gave it away for free on purpose. He could have been perhaps a very rich person, but he chose not to do that. Okay? You can choose to give away your chair, or you can choose to keep it. Okay, so what's the deal here, economically speaking? Again, what we want is people to generate what we call primary works, new, exciting, innovative ideas, not just books and magazines and, movies and songs. We want them to invent new technology, right? We want them to invent new batteries and new ways to run electric cars and new ways to clean up smokestacks and better car tires and GPS and lasers and all that stuff. We want people to invent that. We call those original ideas primary works. So J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings is not the first fantasy novel, but it's kind of the fantasy novel that all others get measured against. So take it as the primary work. Then we have these things called derivative works. Derivative works are works based on the primary work. So you invent a new antibiotic, other people are going to try to invent similar antibiotics. They can't use your antibiotic because you have a monopoly over it. But maybe they'll figure out a way to change a molecule, add a carbon atom, take out a hydrogen atom, move something around, and produce another antibiotic that works. So these are derivative works. If copyright law or patent law is too tight and too severe, we protect the primary work, and the owner of the primary work makes more money, but we block derivative works. So we have to have this balance again, and economics is all about this, costs and benefits, and there's always winners and losers and costs and benefits and trade-offs in everything. Nothing is ever simple. There's no free lunches. The more we grant protection to primary works, the fewer derivative works we get. The more we protect that first medicine, the fewer similar medicines we're going to get. The more we protect Lord of the Rings, the fewer. So Terry Brooks, the Sword of Shannara, it's the Lord of the Rings. He just changed the names and rewrote it. Okay? Made a lot of money. There's TV shows based on it, but really it's complete and total ripoff. Okay? How far can we go to protect primary works and still allow derivative works? How long are these things? Well, Congress keeps extending copyrights. Anything before 1972 that you wrote has a different set of rules, but now anything you write is the author's life plus 70 years is the length of the copyright. So if you want to write a Harry Potter novel, you're going to have to wait 70 years after J.K. Rowling is dead before you can create a derivative work. Okay, if you have a great idea, the world's greatest idea for a Harry Potter novel, you got to keep it inside of you for probably another 100 years. Okay? We have these things called trademarks. A trademark is a short thing. It's a phrase. It's have it your way, something special in the air. Anything, those little phrases that attach to things. And you're going to, one of your readings is about Taylor Swift and the fact she always tries to trademark everything she ever says. Trademark lasts forever. Trademarks never expire. They expire, A, if you stop using it, or B, if you stop defending it. So Kleenex is technically a trademark term, but courts have basically said that the Kleenex company stopped defending it. They didn't sue people who were using the word Kleenex to mean tissue, and now you can't really consider Kleenex, the word Kleenex, to be trademarked. So everybody who has a trademark has to defend it and use it, or it goes away. If you're not using it, it goes away. And we'll talk about this more in a second. Patents on inventions. So if you invent a new, Apple invented curved edges on a phone and got a patent. Patents last 14 to 20 years. You invent a new drug, you get 17 years. It all depends on what type of invention you did, but generally speaking, 14 to 20 years. You get exclusive use. You get a monopoly for that long. Okay, doke. Work for hire. You work for DC Comics, and it was a different company back then, but you work for DC Comics. You invent Superman, faster than a speeding bullet. That copyright has been extended over and over and over again by Congress. So if you write something at your life plus 70 for yourself, if, on the other hand, you write something for your employer, it's a work for hire, then that work for hire copyright belongs not to you, but to the company that paid you to do it, and that copyright lasts for 95 years. So Superman was created in 1938. So 2033, Superman will stop being copyrighted and move into what we call the public domain. There's enough trademarks on Superman that you're not going to get to use them anytime soon. The Wizard of Oz is in the public domain. It was written in 1907. So you can freely write new Wizard of Oz books if you want and use the characters in the Wizard of Oz. They're not trademarked. They're not copyrighted. Lord of the Rings. It's not that far. Hobbit and Lord of the Rings aren't that far from J.R.R. Tolkien died in the 60s. So, another 20 years, except that all those names are trademarked. My parents used to live 2 blocks over from a street called Elrond, and they got sued by the Tolkien family, and that street had to change its name. You've got to defend your trademark to keep it, but if they keep defending their trademark, it'll be okay. Thor, the mighty Thor, is thousands of years old. You can't copyright Thor. Anybody can write a Thor book. You can't use things that are unique to the Marvel version of Thor, but you can write a Thor book. Wizard of Oz, by the way, you have to use the silver slippers that were in the book, not the ruby slippers that are in the movie, because the movie, for another 10 years, is still under copyright. Mickey Mouse is about to go off of copyright. He's 2 years away. However, they keep changing his face. And so if you want to do a Mickey Mouse cartoon, you can in 3 years, but you've got to use his original face from the original movies, not the current face, because they changed the face. Just like everything else in the world, these things are very complicated. So what you have is, again, derivative works versus primary works. I had a much better idea for Terminator 3 than they made. But I can't make Terminator 3 because I don't own the copyright, and the people who own the copyright made their own Terminator 3. I could have fixed the last 6 Star Wars movies and made them good, but no. The last Superman movies, the Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, were horrible. I could have fixed them, but no. I don't own the copyright. I have to live with the fact that I have these ideas for derivative works that are way better than the original, but I can't use them. Okay, so Captain Marvel. The original Captain Marvel is up at the top, has to go by the name Shazam. So 2 things here. One is he was found to be a copyright violation of Superman. They were separate companies at the time. The owners of Superman sued the owners of Captain Marvel and won that basically he was a total ripoff of Superman. But the company that owned his rights, DC, stopped making Captain Marvel comics. Along comes Marvel Comics, and they invent their own Captain Marvel, it's got all kinds of incarnations. Originally was a man, now is a woman, all this other stuff, but they put out their own Captain Marvel. They now own the rights because DC didn't defend their trademark, their copyright on the original Captain Marvel. So the original Captain Marvel is now called Shazam, and the new Captain Marvel gets to be the Captain Marvel. Okay, again, you have to use it and you have to defend it, and they didn't. And so we had technically 2 Captain Marvel movies out at the same time, but one of them is called Shazam, and the other one is called Captain Marvel because all this copyright stuff. Okay? The trick to this is things that are in the public domain. You can do whatever you want to with Beethoven because Beethoven is in the public domain. Beethoven wrote years and years and years and years and years ago. All that music's in the public domain. If, however, I play on my piano a Beethoven composition and record it, I can record my own personal composition. So the notes are in the public domain. The performance is subject to copyright. Again, just to say how complexical this is, a lot has to do with who does what they do, when they do it, how much they do. So this woman named Jane Yolen wrote a book called Wizard's Hall. Wizard's Hall is the story of a young wizard named Henry, a young man named Henry who is 11 years old. He gets to go to wizard school. He goes to wizard school. He has a tall, red-headed roommate. He finds out that there's a prophecy that the most evil, dark wizard of all time is about to rise, and only Henry can defeat him. 6 months after Wizard's Hall comes out in England, J.K. Rowling writes Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone originally. And it's got Henry and a tall red-headed and a prophecy and I grant you, Harry Potter's way better than Wizard's Hall. Way better than Wizard's Hall. Harry Potter is a million times better than Wizard's Hall. But what would have happened, and again, law schools all across America use this as a case study. What would have happened if Jane Yolen had sued J.K. Rowling? Win or lose? I mean, you can Google this and you can find all kinds of arguments out there on the web about these two books. Okay? How far different do you have to be? How similar can you be before there's a problem? I'm going to sing. You're not going to like it. But the guys on the left, Queen, they wrote a song called Under Pressure that goes the dude on the right came out with a song, which is a rap song, not a rock song, and all this other stuff, but it still goes the guys on the left sued the guy on the right. He had to give them every dime of money he had and actually started racing motorcycles because he stole their stuff. It was deemed by a jury that he stole their stuff. Every song, if you think about how many songs have been written over the last 1,000 years, it's harder and harder and harder to write a song that doesn't at least have some element that makes you think of some other song. There's only so many notes. Those two are essentially identical. How close can you be? Example I use that I won't use here, but I think I might have given you as an assignment, hopefully I did, is Avril Lavigne and this group from the 80s, and the group from the 80s wrote a song called, I Want to Be Your Boyfriend, and Avril Lavigne wrote a song called I Want to Be Your Girlfriend, and you can listen to them, and there's a few, but how much? And it's, these things are, that's why we have juries who sit there and listen to the two songs and decide. Now, some things don't count. For example, class. I can do a lot of stuff in class, which is technically copyright violation, but there's something called fair use that allows me to do it for educational purposes. So as long as I'm not making money off it, and I'm just doing it for my class, I can get away with lots. You can also get away with stuff because you're making fun of it. So there's a book called Board of the Rings that has comely elf maidens, and you probably wouldn't get it because Good Golf the Wizard and Arrowroot, son of Arrowshirt, are references from the 60s, not from the 2000s and whatever, and a lot of the stuff that's in there you wouldn't get, but I can't even say how they changed Bilbo's name in this thing, but it's not a violation of copyright because it's making fun of the original. Saturday Night Live can do all kinds of stuff. They make fun of Hermione and Harry Potter and the fact that they all grew up and, became beautiful because they're allowed. They're allowed to make fun. There's no copyright protection to making fun of somebody, to parodying them, to getting a laugh off them. Okay? So there's ways around the copyright laws for certain things. They're not completely binding. Now there's one other thing that's in the law but not in the patents or whatever. Let's suppose that you build a new kind of airplane here that no one else has ever built before. You built a new engine for your airplane. You can go out and get a patent on that. To do that, you have to let everybody else on the planet Earth know what you did. If you want to keep that new technology secret, or you want to try to keep that new technology secret, you're allowed to do that. It's called a trade secret. And as long as you are actively working to try to keep that secret, if somebody steals it, they get a job in your company on purpose so they can steal your technology without your consent, they are in fact guilty of theft, just as if they had stolen physical stuff. So again, the trick to all of these things, whether you actually patent something or not, the trick is, are you trying to use it? Are you trying to make money off it? Are you trying to protect your interest in it? If you are, it is difficult. And the advantage of why some companies try to keep things as a trade secret, for example, they might have a new metallurgy technique that they're using. Well, they can keep it, if they can keep it secret for 100 years. The formula for Coca-Cola is secret. It's not patented. And as long as other people don't know it, they can't make Coca-Cola. There's no trademark, there's no patent. There's a trademark on Coca-Cola, but there's no patent on it. So if somebody could discover what the secret formula is, they could make it. But they'd have to do it without falling under those rules of trying to steal the intellectual property. Okay? We've talked about China stealing intellectual property. A lot of what they steal are people's trade secrets. They're secret technologies. They work with companies, they send spies into companies, they hack their web servers to get their trade secrets. Last time we talked about regulatory processes and how regulatories can be captured. Companies can also use the patent laws to their advantage, and drug companies do this all the time. What they do is they have two drugs, one that they currently have out in the market and one that they keep secret. So they invent new stomach medicines. Maybe they invent 4 of them. But they put one out and they keep the other one secret. So they put one drug out. It works for 17 years. It's on patent, which means it's being prescribed at the pharmacy. There's no generics. They make a ton of money off it. As soon as it's ready to come off of patent, which means somebody can start making a cheap generic of it, they move it over, they get permission from the government to sell it over the counter, and they put out a new drug which is under patent protection again, which requires a prescription. The trick here is that prescription drugs your insurance company pays for, over-the-counter drugs your insurance company does not pay for. So they can charge much higher prices for prescription drugs, even if it's essentially the same drug as the over-the-counter drug. They protect themselves from the generic by putting out their own over-the-counter drug, and then they get all the doctors to prescribe the new prescription drug, and they actually use the patent system so that whatever drug is being prescribed never falls off of patent, and they can sell it and make money from it, and sell it and make money from it for a really long time. And that's how drug companies are able to mark drugs up by thousands and thousands and thousands of percents. And again, they argue that if they couldn't do that, they wouldn't be able to make as many drugs. Over 80% of all the drugs invented in the world are invented in the United States. We have the highest drug prices in the world. Drug companies argue that those two things go together, that the reason that most drugs are invented in the United States is that we have the highest drug prices. And you can think about that on your own here. So we're going to move on and talk about the amendments.